Hello, SpongicX here with more custom stage footage from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And here is a custom stage someone made of the Pokemon Nosepass. One of the weirdest looking Pokemon next to its evolved form. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people who can't stand this Pokemon. I always like the Pokemon, but I just don't like its evolved form. It's really weird. Whoever made this did a pretty good job, though. I mean, this must not have been an easy stage to make, because it's really hard to try to make the illusion that something has, like, 3D edges when you're just restricted with 2D objects. I doubt we'll ever get a feature like this, but do you know what I think would be a really fun feature to add in a future Pokemon game? So what if they added the ability to eventually customize the appearance of your Pokemon, like color scheme-wise? Like, what if you were able to dye your Pokemon? Because, you know, let's face it, as cool as it is to get a shiny Pokemon, a lot of shinies just have, like, a very disappointing alternate color. I mean, there are some that have, like, really cool ones, like Charizard, where, like, they have, like, a darker black or dark blue appearance, but then there's, like, Pikachu, where his shiny form is just, he has a slightly orangish tint. He barely looks any different from his original yellow color. So, what if we were given the ability to change, like, the Pokemon's primary color, or colors, even? Like, you take them, like, imagine if in a Pokemon game, after you beat the Elite Four, you're able to drop off your Pokemon at a center and pay, like, a pretty expensive fee to, in-game, of course, but, you pay a fee to, have, like, your Pokemon restylized, and then, like, it could take you to, like, a little mini-game, or not mini-game, but, like, a little menu where it shows, like, your Pokemon, and then, gives you, like, a palette of colors to choose from, and I think that would be a really neat idea. Think of all the possibilities people would do, like making a black Gyarados, a green Blastoise, or just whatever your imagination comes up with. I'd love this, it'd be really fun to see people share, like, their creations as well, just show, like, what they did to customize their Pokemon, and I think that would be a fun little idea. I mean, because, after all, a lot of these Pokemon games lately have been introducing, like, some slight little customization or aesthetics for certain Pokemon, but it's just not enough. I want to see them go further than that. What do you guys think? Pokemon fans, do you think that'd be a fun idea for a Pokemon game, to have the ability to customize the Pokemon's appearance or color scheme? Let me know. That's a feature I've been wanting for a real long time, but I doubt we're ever going to get that. But heck, we'd be lucky enough just to get a feature like that in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as DLC. I would love to have custom palettes for the characters, because some of these alternate skins are just really disappointing. This was a really well-made stage. So here's a stage based off of Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And here we have Shake. I'm surprised at how animated this stage looks. It just really matches the style of the show. And but I'll admit, I was never really a huge fan of this show. I mean, there were a few episodes that I thought were funny, but I was honestly more of a fan of, like, the older episodes, back when they originally wanted to be, like, a mystery series. A mystery comedy. I kind of liked that approach, but apparently eventually the creators got sick of that, and they tried acting like that was never how the show was. And I don't know, like, some people thought the show was better without that. I just liked the earlier episodes a lot better. I thought eventually the writing just got terribly lazy. I hate how, like, almost every episode has a plot, but then it never gets resolved. It just abruptly ends. Apparently that's, like, the joke of every episode, but I just don't like, it's like, if you're gonna tell a story, actually finish it. I mean, I did not like the theatrical movie of it. I'll admit it had some funny parts, but I thought, like, the ending was just, like, a huge slap in the face. It's like, wow, I'm glad I did not pay money to see that in theaters. I'm glad I just saw it on TV because I would have felt ripped off by that movie. But regardless, though, you know, I still have some fond memories of certain episodes. There are definitely some like moments in the show that cracked me up, and so yeah, I thought the stage was really well made. I find it funny how they used the DK rap, because the theme song from the original series was a rap. So yeah, the only rap in this game is the DK rap. But anyone else wish they used the original DK rap instead, though? The one from DK64? I missed that version. I thought that version was so much better than the one that they remade for Melee. I just did not like the Melee version. I thought the voices they used were kind of annoying, and they kind of ruined the song. I liked it originally when it was just Grant Kirkhope just singing it, and I don't like how they have like all these different voices or impersonations, whatever to... and then some people are ticked off that the ultimate version of the DK rap was shortened. They cut out the Lanky Kong and Chunky Kong verse. Honestly, it doesn't bother me that much because I thought those were the worst parts of the Melee version. I hated the voices they used. Like, I hated how when Chunky came up, they used the voice like this. And I hated how, like, with Lanky's voice, they just had a slow, lazy voice. Yeah, I just did not like that. I liked it better when it was just Grant Kirkhope simply singing the song. So, what do you guys think? Did you like the original better, or did you like the Melee version better? Feel free to let me know what you thought. But that's just my personal opinion. I personally like the N64 version better. That's one reason why I'm glad that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate allows you to customize the music, you know, choose which ones you want to have play in a stage and which ones you don't want to have play in a stage, because I couldn't stand how in the original Melee you always had to hear the DK rap and playing that that one Donkey Kong level with the rapids in the background, and so I like how in this one you can just have it optional, and I love how they also have it where each stage music is separated by the theme of the stage. So if it's a Mario stage, that means any song that fits like a Mario category can work with that stage. I like that approach. It's very different. So I always hated how there's certain songs like in a Kirby stage that you want to hear in another Kirby stage, but you can never get it to play in that one. So it's nice to see that Ultimate gave you the option to do that. So here's a funny stage based off a funny scene from SpongeBob, the episode My Pretty Seahorse. Basically, Patrick trying to build a horse stable. The scene is pretty self-explanatory. Speaking of SpongeBob, boy did we get a really good surprise today. So, I'm not saying something because the other day there was a really disappointing announcement. So I think I'll talk about that first and then get the good news out of the way after that. So the bad news is that they announced that they're making a new spin-off of SpongeBob, entirely computer animated, about a 10-year-old SpongeBob going to camp. It's going to be called Camp Coral. Nothing else was told about the series, but that sounds very disappointing. So it's basically a kid show version of SpongeBob, which is incredibly pointless. Like, remember how in the 90s or late 80s there were those really pointless kid version shows like Flintstones Kids, Tom and Jerry Kids, A Pup Named Scooby-Doo? I mean, I thought all those shows were terrible, and I thought, like, what was the point of these? Especially since some of these characters were kids to begin with, that, like, Scooby-Doo, the characters were kids to begin with, so did teenagers, yes, but did it really make sense to make them even younger? I just don't get it. So we're getting we're getting a series of SpongeBob where he's now 10 years old and he's going to camp. As if people didn't complain that Camp Lazlo was enough of a ripoff of SpongeBob to begin with, now it's like it's going full circle. Ugh. But what also bugs me about this is how not only are we getting... It's bad enough that originally this was the rumor of what the third movie was going to be about, and so that was already disappointing. Now you're telling me we're having a series about it? Since we're actually having a spin-off series of Camp Coral, can we please restore the original conception for the plot of the third SpongeBob movie? Because apparently the plot of the third SpongeBob movie is currently going to be where SpongeBob lost Gary and he recalls memories of going to camp. That's apparently all we've gotten so far. That sounds very disappointing. And now you look at the storyboards for the scrapped version of the original third movie, and it looks so much better, where it would have involved SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, and Squidward going to the surface and trying to stop, like, an army of cats from outer space. I mean, yes, it sounds like a ridiculous plot, but my god, the concept art looked amazing. It's like, it's such a shame that this went to waste. So, since we're getting a series of this Camp Coral, can we please scrap the camp plot from the third movie and come up with a better plot? Or better yet, just restore the original third plot, because that looked pretty good. So yeah, so here's the good news of SpongeBob, though. So, they just announced that they are making a remake of SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom for PC, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. It's going to be called SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Now, I am really psyched for this, because SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, that is what I consider the best TV show spin-off video game of all time. This was around a time where TV show spin-offs were really dying out. Like, you could really see how they were becoming cash grabs. They had no effort put into them whatsoever anymore. Because back then, there was a day where people actually loved, video games inspired by Disney films, and then eventually came to a point where they all just felt terrible. Like, I remember the first one I played where I realized it's not like the ones from the 90s. It would probably be the Finding Nemo video game. I thought that felt like a ripoff. So, SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, that was like a great video game. It had a lot of inspiration from games like Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and a little bit of Ratchet and Clank even, minus the weapons, but definitely more like around the collectible aspects, because it encouraged you to destroy things and get collectibles that you would need to progress through the game. And so SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, that's one of my favorite spin-off games of all time, or TV show-based games of all time. And so it was already rumored that if anything, you were going to get a remaster or re-release of it, like digitally or something, because Nickelodeon announced last year that they were interested in reviving some popular Nickelodeon video games. So everyone was shouting out SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. They knew that was going to get a re-release, because that is definitely one of the most memorable for a lot of people. You see a lot of SpongeBob fans, even video game fans in general, just saying how much they loved that game on whether it was GameCube, PlayStation 2, or Xbox. So yeah, it's really exciting to see we're getting a remake, and there's no release date confirmed whatsoever, but not only is this going to be a remake, but it's also going to be it's going to have a lot of restored features that were cut from the original version. And so one they gave in specific was the robot Squidward boss fight. So in the original concept for the game, there was supposed to be a boss fight against a giant mechanical Squidward who had like these giant metal tentacles that he'd try attacking you with. So SpongeBob would have to fight that thing off, kind of like how he had to fight off a giant robot of Sandy, Patrick, and himself. And so Squidward was absent in the home console and PC version, but he was included in the Game Boy Advance version. But the Game Boy Advance version, I don't think a lot of people really cared for that version. It was pretty underwhelming. People mostly remembered the home console version, where the PC version was just an underwhelming minigame collection. But, so yeah, I'm really excited to see not only restored features, but new features as well. They said how this one would actually have multiplayer, so it'd be like co-op wave battles, because in the original they have like the wave battles where you fought off waves of enemies, like wave 1, wave 2, final wave, and so the fact that we actually get a mode where players can choose between SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy and team up to fight them off, that sounds really cool. And so we also got some screenshots on Steam, and it's hard to tell if these are just concept arts or actual screenshots from in-game, but if they are screenshots, they look really good. They really did a good job at improving the visuals. So it definitely looks a little brighter, though. I kind of liked how the original one had a bit of a darker look to it. But other than that, though, I think the textures and 3D models and the backgrounds look really good. They look like a big improvement, and it makes me glad to see that the game is actually, a remake instead of just a restored version, because although at the time when I was a kid I thought the graphics looked really good for its limitations, You know, the models were really well made for its time, but looking back on it, it's like, yeah, the graphics could have been a little better. But, so yeah, that's another reason why it's really great to see we're getting this remake. It makes me wonder, though, with this remake, are they going to reuse the original audio, or are they going to try remaking? If anything, I wouldn't mind if they kept the original voice clips, but I really hope they at least try redoing the music a bit. Because the music in that game was incredible, and so I'd love to see them try remaking it to sound even better, if possible. If not, just leave the music the way it is. I'd rather, you know, I only want them to try remaking it if they know they can do better, but if they can't, just leave it as it is. But, so yeah, anyone else excited for SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom? Rehydrated? I know I am. I'm definitely thinking of possibly getting that for Switch, because that would be a fun game to play on the go. Without, you know, playing handheld mode. That sounds fun. I'm wondering, like, what else could they do with this game? I know there's, like, some other scrapped ideas they could possibly bring back. I remember, like, originally it was said that Salty Spittoon was supposed to be a location in the game. It was supposed to be part of, the Goo Lagoon level, and it was actually supposed to be a mission. There was supposed to be a mission where SpongeBob was supposed to try to sneak into it. And, unfortunately, that was scrapped from the end game. If I'm not mistaken, some data miners actually found, like, some unused objects of where it would have been in the game. There was, like, some unused areas for Goo Lagoon, and it's inaccessible in the final game, and it's unfinished as well. But, I mean, not only that, but the fact that there was evidence, like, I remember even a SpongeBob Season 3 DVD, they had, like, pop-up trivia, and if you had the pop-up trivia playing during the episode No Weenies Allowed, it flat out mentioned how one of the missions in SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom was to sneak into the Salty Spittoon. And so apparently that was made before the game was finalized, because that became very obsolete. I mean, this has happened before in video games. I remember how in the manual for Super Smash Bros. Melee, it originally said that Ditto was supposed to be a Pokemon you could summon from the Pokeballs, and that was not the case. The only way to actually have him come out was in, if you had an action replay and used the debug menu, but even if you did, Ditto was incomplete. He didn't actually do what he was functioned. And luckily in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, it took, you know, that many games later for them to actually make him functional, where Ditto was able to transform into, you know, the person who summoned him and help you fight off the enemies. And so, you know, it's interesting how some games can do that, where they have scrap concepts that didn't make it in the original, but made it in either a re-release or a remake. Heck, there's still one scrap feature that I am very disappointed in that never made a feature, and that was in Banjo-Tooie. So, in Banjo-Tooie, has anyone ever heard of the Devil Bottles mode? Where originally, when, like, you went up to Bottles' dead body at the beginning of the game, well, at a later point in the game, if you return to Bottles' dead body, there would have, his angel would have been taken over by, like, a devil form, and the devil places a curse on Banjo that allows, players with a second controller to possess enemies, like all the enemies and even the boss battles in the game, to, mess around with player one, and that sounded like such a fun feature, and in fact, the game actually does have the feature available, but it's only available if you have a Game Shark. So it's only available through hacking. And I remember when Banjo-Tooie was first announced for Xbox 360 on Xbox Live Arcade, they said they were going to bring back Devil Bottles mode, but then when the game came out, there was no Devil Bottles mode, and then Rare admit at last moment, oh, we're sorry, we couldn't get it in the game, and that was just bull crap. They were just too lazy to put it in the game, because, I mean, if hackers were able to put it in, I don't see how the creators themselves weren't able to put it in. I don't know, I just thought that was really lousy of them to promise something, and then after the game release, they said, oh yeah, we went against that. That was really disappointing. Shame too, because Banjo-Tooie was a good port. I thought they did a really good job at porting it over to Xbox 360, and, you know, I love still replaying that game on Rare Replay on my Xbox One every now and then. So, yeah, it would have been so much nicer, though, to finally be able to fully realize Devil Bottles mode. I've never personally tried it out, though, but I've seen some gameplay footage of it, and I thought it looked really cool. So, yeah, it's a shame that we'll probably never get to see that, but, you know, the best thing we can hope for is that rumors of a Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie remake do happen someday, and then they decide to restore it with that, and who knows, though. Another game I would love to see get restored, if not re-released, would be the original beta version for Conker's Bad Fur Day. Back when it was supposed to be an E-rated game, 12 Tales Conker 64. I thought that looked amazing, honestly. I don't get why Rare canceled that. They should have released that first and then released Bad Fur Day a few years later. Apparently they complained that the game was too similar to Banjo-Kazooie and Mario 64, and that the N64 needed more adult games, and looking at the old gameplay, though, that was leaked for it, I don't get why it was canceled. I thought it looked pretty unique, despite being a 3D platformer. I thought it looked more fun than Bad Fur Day, in fact. I'm not afraid to admit that. The levels just looked so much bigger. It looked like there was so much more to do. I mean, we even had multiple playable characters, because Barry was supposed to be playable. And, the only thing you can say that Bad Fur Day definitely had over the original is probably the multiplayer mode. I mean, that was definitely a huge step up from compared to the original, where it was just a bunch of Conker clones fighting each other on a background. But I still think a lot of that game went wasted. There's just so much unique stuff in that game that you don't really see in other video games, so I don't get why they canceled it. I thought it looked a lot of fun, like being able to pull out a slingshot anywhere, where in Bad Fur Day he was only able to pull that out for a few short segments and a few levels. So it didn't feel as fun as actually being able to pull it out whenever you wanted. I liked how Conker was able to pull out a bunch of stuff that he could use throughout the game, like a hang glider, a kite. He wore like all those fun little hats when he went into different levels. There were so many levels that went unused too. I mean, we had like a western level, like a jungle exploration level. There's just a Toy Kingdom. I just don't get why the game was scrapped. So I really do think that Rare should consider remaking that, if not re-releasing it on Xbox One. It's like if they re-release it, they can just release it as a digital title, so if they have any concerns of it not selling enough copies, it's like they barely have to do anything with it, because as far as I know, the game is complete, and a lot of people try making rumors that the game doesn't exist anymore, but I'd say after what we've seen in Rare Replay, there's evidence that they still have a copy of the game, because in one of the Rare Replay promotional videos on YouTube, they showed, they showed, like, gameplay from the original version, and unlike the other gameplay we've seen from, like, E3 and stuff like that, this footage was crystal clear, as if it was straight off of an emulator. So it gives you an idea that, okay, Rare has a copy of this game. They have a working copy of it. And so, I just wish they would release it, because as far as I know, they did say the game was complete. It could have come out to stores back then, but they chose to cancel it because they thought it was a lost cause. But if they're not gonna release the original, the best they could do is remake it then. And then some people will probably wonder though, if they did re-release it, what would they do about the name? Because they'd have to change it to something other than Conker 64. But there's many ways they could do it though. They call it just Conker's 12 Tales, or Conker Before the Bad Fur Day, or it'd even be funny if they actually presented it like in modern day times, and the whole game was like fleshed out as a flashback of Conker going back to a simpler time when he was a kid. And so, imagine him like pulling out like a big storybook, and he decides like try reading a story, or so I mean that would be kind of like a funny idea. It would allow them to show like a more restrained version of Conker. So it's like the last time we saw him, he is in an M-rated game. So what would happen if he was forced to cut back and tell a kid-friendlier story? So we could see how there were like moments where he almost said like a bad word, but then he has to cut himself off and go back to being a kid-friendly narrator. I mean, there's a lot of funny ways they could present this game if it were remade or re-released, and I would love to see them somehow bring back 12 Tales. That would be a great experience for me personally. I know I'm not the only one though. I've heard a lot of people said they wish that game got released. I get so jealous of looking up, like footage of the game and just feeling so angry that I can never play that. I just want to play that game so badly. There's just so many things you can do in that game that you can't even do in the remake. I mean, Conker was definitely more athletic than the original. He looked a lot faster to control. He could do more abilities. It's like, God, what happened? I hate to say it, but it makes Bad Fur Day look boring in comparison. I mean, I love Conker's Bad Fur Day, but it just feels so pale compared to the original version. So, here's a stage inspired by Reptar from Rugrats. I remember having really fond memories of watching it as a kid, but I remember, like, back in the early 2000s, I just remember getting really sick of the show, and so when it came to the point where I noticed the show was no longer on the air, everyone around me was just crying, like, where's Rugrats? I miss it. And here I was just like, oh, it's gone? Huh. Well, at least we still have SpongeBob. And I just, and so recently, I noticed how the show was on Hulu, and so I tried rewatching it, but I kept in mind how, it's like, last I saw of it, I was getting sick of the show. It was just boring, and so I was watching, like, the first 3 seasons, and I was laughing and remembering why I liked the show, and I was starting to, like, think, why did I start disliking it in the first place? And then I'd say it wasn't until, like, the episodes where Kimmy was brought along, where I just started to realize how stale the show was getting, repetitive and boring, and I was like, oh, now I remember. I mean, the original episodes were just, like, at least the first 3 seasons especially, they were just so creative, and I just loved, like, the creativity behind them. It showed, like, the perspective of a child's mind, the way they see the world when it's not explained to them properly or when they're too young to understand it, and it reminded me of why the show was so relatable when I was a kid, but then a lot of the later episodes, like, especially when they started bringing Dill over, and it's just, the show started relying more on toilet humor, and so, back then we went from clever jokes that only adults would get to just the word poopy being said over and over, and it just got really annoying. And, just when I thought the show couldn't get any worse, I saw, the last 2 things that were produced for the series, and that was, like, the straight-to-DVD movies, the Fairy Tale spin-offs, and that was where I was like, yep, I can see why the show was canceled. These were the show at its, these movies were the show at its worst, and God, I thought the Wild Thornberrys crossover was terrible. Honestly, the only Rugrat movie I really enjoyed was the Paris one. The first one was, I felt mixed about it, honestly. I mean, I thought the animation was really good, but I thought a lot of the, I don't know, like, I just didn't think it was very funny. It wasn't, I felt like the tone was a little too dark for a Rugrats movie. I mean, the whole movie was mostly just the characters turning on each other, and that wasn't very pleasant to sit through, even as a kid. And the Paris movie, I thought that was much better. It was more emotional, and it's a shame that the season that followed right after wasn't as good. But then the Wild Thornberrys crossover, Rugrats Go Wild, I thought that was very disappointing. It just felt too random and not... And that's a shame, too, because I liked both of those shows, and I thought the crossover of them sounded really interesting, but in the end, it's like, wow, this, it had the same problems that plagued, like, the later episodes, and it relied too much on childish toilet humor. And so, yeah, but yeah, I can say this show still holds up for, like, the original 3 seasons. I can see why people still have nostalgia for that, but, rewatching on Hulu reminded me of why I stopped watching it in the first place. Now Nickelodeon wants to reboot that franchise, unfortunately. Not only have they announced that they're going to do an animated reboot of it, which I think sounds like a terrible idea, but they also said they want to make a live-action movie adaptation. Oh, God. That just sounds terrible. But I also don't like the sound of them making an animated reboot. That sounds really stupid. I can already tell the art style is probably going to be disappointing, but when you realize that a lot of the voice actors aren't there anymore, that's what also makes it hardening. I mean, we lost the original voice of Chucky. I mean, in the original series, we only lost her because she retired from voice acting, and so she was replaced with Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson. She took over as Chucky. She wasn't as good as the original voice, but yeah, a few years ago, it was reported that the original voice passed away, apparently, and that was pretty depressing to hear. Heck, I thought she was already dead since I noticed as a kid that they replaced the voice already. But so to find out that the voice, well, that she was alive after that, but then died a few years ago, that's pretty heartbreaking to hear. And then we also lost the voice of Grandpa Lou. He was one of my favorite voices from that show. I mean, his voice work was really good. He was one of my favorite voices for Daffy Duck besides Mel Blanc. He was also the voice of Plucky from Tiny Toon Adventures, and yeah, he was a really good voice actor, and it's just not going to be the same if they recast it. And the last voice actor for Rugrats I heard to pass away is also another heartbreaker, and that was the voice of Stu, Tommy's dad, and he was also a very likable character. It was a shame to hear that he died, and I just don't want to see Nickelodeon reboot the series because it's just not going to be the same. They cannot get anyone to replace those voices. And then that's also what bugs me, though, because aside from those voices I mentioned, not all the voices from Rugrats are pleasant to hear. I thought they got very annoying, especially in the later episodes. I mean, in the early episodes, they were kind of cute, but eventually it just got really annoying and irritating. I thought, Tommy's voice, it sounded fine, in the first 3 seasons, but then I thought, ever since season 4, when the animation style changed drastically and the music sounded different, I noticed, his voice wasn't as good as it used to be. And then Phil and Lil, their voice actors is pretty good, but I just think, the voice she uses for Phil and Lil gets very annoying. Same with, the voice that, Angelica has, the same voice that Susie has. I don't know. I just thought a lot of the Rugrat characters were very annoying, especially in the later episodes, and so I'm not sure if I'd want to see them reboot that if it means having to hear those voices again. But it's a shame too because these voice actresses are very good, depending on what you hear them from. But when they play these really childish characters, their voices can get very annoying. It's that's how I feel about Tara Strong, for instance. It's there are some characters she can play that sound really good. I thought, her version of Raven from the original Teen Titans animated show, I thought that was good. But then it's the voice she uses for Timmy Turner, Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls, or Harley Quinn from the modern day Batman. I think that voice can get very irritating. And so, it's nothing against the voice actor. She's a very good voice actress, but there are just some characters where she plays these really high-pitched characters, and they just really irritate the ears. And I know I'm probably the only one who thinks this, but I never hear anyone else complain about it, but there's just something about that really bugs me. I'm surprised, it's, speaking of Harley Quinn, I don't get why Tara Strong is constantly getting recast to play the modern-day voice of her. You know who I think would be a better voice for Harley Quinn? Get Kate Higgins. She would be a great voice for that, especially, if you've ever played, Soul Calibur games, she was the voice of, Tira. And Tira is a very Harley Quinn-esque character, because she's a character of, a split personality. So 1 minute she's all, trigger happy. She has this real bubbly, hyper voice, and then all of a sudden it turns into a real dark and angry kind of voice. And so I could see that working as Harley Quinn. I can see her playing off that really well. 1 minute being all ditzy and wacky, but then all of a sudden getting really angry and vicious the next minute. And so it makes me wonder, how come they never got Kate Higgins to voice Harley Quinn? I think she would be a much better voice for the character than Tara Strong. Nothing against Tara Strong, though. She's a great voice actress, but I just do not like her as Harley Quinn. It's hard to admit that, though, when there's a voice actor you really like, but you can't help but say that there's a certain character they play that really annoys you. It's like Tom Kenny. I think he's a great voice actor, but yeah, there's definitely some characters or voices he uses that can get kind of irritating sometimes. Same thing with voice actors like D. Bradley Baker. But who am I to judge? I don't have the best voice either, so I would not last in voice acting. At least I can admit that. I wish I could voice act, though, because it looks like it would be a lot of fun. I mean, there are times where I just want to impersonate a character, but I just do terrible. And yeah, I do not have the most pleasant voice, I can admit that. So here we have a pretty interesting stage. It is of Shanti from the Shanti games. It's her opening a little portal and looking down on the Smash Brothers fighters. So I thought that was really creative. Just her looking into a window and looking into another world, and possibly even dreaming of being a fighter as well. And pretty interesting idea for a stage. I still really want to play one of these games. I've seen some gameplay footage of what's the latest one called? Is it the Pirate Curse? Isn't that the current one that? I know they're coming out with a fifth one now, but the most recent one, that's like the only one that really stood out to me. That's the one that has like the hand-drawn animation style, where the others look more pixelated, and it does look very fun. I'm usually one who's getting sick of 2D platformers, but that's one that looks creative enough. It stands out from the others, because I'm more interested in like the side-scrolling games that have like a unique art style, not like a very pixelated or... I mean, there's something about like pixelated ones that feel kind of outdated now, and then there's something about like ones that are 3D that just feel limited. It's like, if you're gonna make a game with 3D models, you should make like an actual 3D roaming game out of it. It feels kind of restrictive to just reduce like these gorgeous looking models into just only being able to move left and right. That's one reason why I'm not too big of a fan of the modern day Sonic the Hedgehog formula, because I hate how it forces side-scrolling into it. I'd rather just control the characters in a free-roaming, direction instead of being forced to only move left and right. But there's something about hand-drawn where it works really well. I mean, that's one reason why I think like Rayman Legends works really well, because I don't think the game would have been as good if it just used a pixelized art style. What really made it stand out was the gorgeous artwork. And I would say Rayman Origins also looked pretty good, but after Legends came out, it makes Origins look terrible in comparison. Because Origins just looks so empty now, because Legends had such better details and like lighting and shading on the characters that it makes looking back at the original, it makes it look like comparing an old Flash animation to something made in Toon Boom Studio. That's like how drastic the art style has improved over Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends. Speaking of which, I'm surprised we still haven't gotten a sequel to Rayman Legends, or a revival of the 3D Rayman platformers with more of an inspiration from the Rayman Legends gameplay. I mean, that would be kind of fun, because, Rayman 2 was basically a reinvention of the original Rayman for PlayStation. And of all the Rayman games, the original Rayman is the most drastically different out of the sequels. Despite the fact how Rayman Origins tried, reviving the original Rayman gameplay, it still had a lot of stuff that felt familiar to, like, Rayman 2. I mean, it had the sillier tone of the original Rayman, but a lot of the gameplay elements kind of reflected more of, like, Rayman 2 in a way. Like, with the characters' art styles and stuff like that. It's like they took the tone from the original, but they restored, like, the, kind of like the style of the modern-day Rayman. And so makes you wonder, like, how would a 3D Rayman work if it had inspiration from Rayman Legends? So it had a more artistic art style, wackier movement, and that'd be kind of interesting. So here's a pretty interesting stage, another Shanti stage, and I was surprised at how well animated this stage was. So it might look a little suggestive, but I thought it was real impressive, because this is something that the character does. She apparently does like a little belly dance whenever she wins a level in the games, or something like that. And so the fact that someone actually made a stage of her dancing, it's pretty well done with the limitations the game gives you. I find it sad if Nintendo ever takes the stage down because they consider it inappropriate. Like, I've seen some very inappropriate stages from Super Smash Bros. I don't really see anything inappropriate about this one. It's just a girl dancing, that's all it is. It's not like she's naked. It's not like we are seeing any nudity. So, it's not like we're seeing any bodily fluids or so. I don't get why Nintendo would even consider blocking this off, because I know like there have been some stages that were blocked off just because it showed like too much of a character's upper leg or something. So if they're gonna block the stage just because it shows off someone's belly or cleavage, that's kind of ridiculous. This is what the character looks like in the game, people. She's in the game that's rated 10+, so are you really gonna block a stage just for being what it is in the games? That's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I don't see the game, I don't see Nintendo adding any restrictions to this game for having some, you know, auto-looking choices. I mean, look at, Shulk. He flat out has an outfit where he's in nothing but his underwear. Yeah, so that's what I don't get. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has very inconsistent, like, censorship. It kind of makes me wish the game went back to being rated T for teen, like Brawl was, because I know, like, Sakurai was very, you know, like, he made a very good argument about, like, some of the censorship he had to do for characters like Palutena, because I remember seeing, like, an article on the internet where originally, Palutena did have rendered underwear in the original game, but, the Zero rating system in Japan required him to, censor it by giving her shorts instead, and he thought that was ridiculous censorship. He said, you know, he said apparently, the system has no problem with people, you know, committing acts of violence, but they'll flip their lid when a character shows a piece of clothing. And that's exactly how I feel about censorship. Now, I can agree, it is very questionable and inappropriate to dress up like this in real life, but this is fantasy where anything can happen. And, you know, the fact that people are more concerned over what a character wears compared to the violent actions they can commit, whether it's a video game, a show, or a movie, it is ridiculous. We have ratings for a reason. I find it ridiculous when even M-rated games are getting censored like crazy. You know, there's so much that M-rated games could get away with back then because they had an M rating, and now it's like they want every video game to be either rated E or up to teen rated. And so it makes you wonder, why do we have age ratings to begin with if no one's gonna follow them? I thought ratings had a purpose, you know? If a game has an M rating, then that means, yes, a child should not be playing it. But apparently a lot of irresponsible parents don't consider that. They think every game has to be made for kids. You know, they're too lazy to take care of their own children. They have to expect video games to take care of them. And, I don't know. I'm just really sick of this. You know, I agree. We live in a day and age where this stuff is inappropriate in real life. But in fantasy, what's it gonna harm? As long as people have the common sense to know they shouldn't mimic what they see in TV or video games, what do they have to worry about? I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, that's one thing, you know, back when I was a kid, I was not always allowed to play M-rated video games. I had to earn the right to do it. Originally, when my parents got me a video game console, they only wanted me to play, they didn't even want me to play, like, games that had fighting in it. They didn't even want me to play the original Super Smash Bros. They just wanted me to play driving games, but eventually I proved to them, you know, that I was able to know what to do in video games and what not to do in real life. And because of that, I gradually earned my way through to the point where I was actually able to play my first M-rated game as a teenager. And, that's what a lot of parents should do, you know. They shouldn't just give their kids any video game they want and expect them to... They gotta test them first, make sure they're mature enough to be able to handle these games and not mimic them in real life. You know, so here... All of my life, I've been playing a lot of games that include a lot of violence, whether it ranges from E-rated violence to bloody M-rated violence, yet I've never, you know, dreamed of killing anyone, and I never plan to either. I've never committed a serious act of violence, so, yeah. People who say that people who play violent video games are, you know, likely to become violent themselves, I strongly disagree with that. It's all in the parenting. You gotta make sure kids are ready before they handle violent video games. I can believe that, yes, there probably are some corrupted people who can get badly influenced by a video game, but the way I see it, for me at least, video games were a stress reliever, because, you know, I had a pretty rough life as a kid. I got picked on a lot in school, and, I had some tough times with my sisters growing up as well, but, So what would I do to, relieve my stress? Instead of committing violence, I would, like committing a violent act in real life, I would commit violence in a video game. That was my stress reliever. So, I'd rather see people, destroying stuff in a video game than destroying stuff in real life. That's all I can say. And that's one great thing about video games. They can allow people to do fantasies without consequences. I would never dream of wanting to do this stuff in real life, but do it in a place where consequences don't happen. It's like, what's to worry about? In video games, you can reset life. In real life, you cannot. So, here's a stage inspired by the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Goofy Goober Rock. Pretty well done. I find it so strange how you can actually knock out the chain chomp. I'm surprised we haven't heard much of what's going to happen to the show since Steven Hillenburg passed away. Because, as far as I know, it's like the show was renewed for a 12th season before the sad news approached, and it's hard to tell if there's going to be any more seasons after that. And it doesn't sound very assuring that Nickelodeon's already planning spin-offs for the series. It almost sounds like they're going to give up on the original and just focus on cash grabbing on these spin-offs. And so far, the first spin-off sounds terrible, but there is one episode they announced, though, and it's going to be the 20th anniversary special that's set to release, I believe they said next month, in July. It's going to be an hour-long special, and it's eventually, not only is it going to be an anniversary special that celebrates 20 years of SpongeBob, but it's also going to, it's going to be an animated episode, but I heard one of the big selling points for it is going to be where it crosses over into live action, so we're actually going to see the voice actors as the characters themselves. So how this is going to happen, I'm not sure. Maybe Sandy built like a crazy invention that somehow turned them all, transfer them all into humans or something. I don't know, but I think that sounds like a funny idea for an episode. They showed like a little photo of the characters, of the cast members, dressed up to resemble their characters in a way. So we see like Tom Kenny wearing a white shirt with a red bow tie, and there's just something so funny about that. How they don't care how old these voice actors are, because it's obvious that some of these voices in the show are gonna consider like SpongeBob and Patrick. They're like young adults. Squidward is more of like a middle-aged adult. Mr. Krabs is an elderly adult. So it's kind of funny to see these voice actors standing next to each other. And you notice how their ages don't seem to quite match like the characters they're supposed to play. I mean, you could argue that, the voice of Sandy probably looks a little older than her character. But I still think it looks really fun. I'm actually looking forward to that. Sounds like a fun idea for an anniversary special. We've only had one anniversary special so far, and that was about 10 years ago when they released True for Square, and apparently that was a very mixed episode. Well, I'll admit it could have been better. I remember actually enjoying it, though. I thought it had some funny moments, but I will admit, though, the plot from the video game adaptation of it was much better, because I remember when True for Square was announced, it was announced as like a celebration of the 10th year anniversary of SpongeBob, and it was gonna delve into like a bunch of flashbacks, and so it was going to reveal a lot of truths about the series or something like that. And so I loved how, in the video game, these flashbacks were actually recreations of episodes from the show. It was SpongeBob recalling, it was basically him trying to remember, something about the Krabby Patty formula, and when he would do that, he would recall back to, something from the past, and then you'd be living out an episode, and the concept of it was nice, but I thought the execution could have been better, because the problem is that although it was kind of fun to see all these shout-outs to past episodes of SpongeBob. They, as a level, though, they did not go together very well. Like, I remember how one of the levels was inspired by Tea at the Tree Dome, when he first met Sandy, but it felt nothing like the episode is the problem. It would have been more fun if they actually tried setting up a better recreation of the episodes in some kind of video game form. I remember, like, the Rugrats video game did that, and back on the PS1, there was the video game, The Search for Reptar, and that was where every level was, like, either a mini-game or a short level inspired by an episode of Rugrats, and the loading screens were, like, the little title screens that popped up, and that's kind of what I was hoping for the SpongeBob Truth or Square video game to play more like. I personally wasn't a huge fan of that game. I love the concept, though, how it was inspired by past episodes, and I wish that was how the TV movie went itself. The TV movie, all the flashbacks were non-existent in the show. Although, I will admit, some of them were entertaining, though. I liked the reveal of how why SpongeBob lives in a pineapple, how he became Squidward's neighbor, what Squidward's life was before he met SpongeBob. And some of the transitions were really funny, too. I think one of the funniest sequences, in my opinion, was one that a lot of people were mixed about, but, like, I'll admit, it was kind of disappointing, but, that it didn't end up being as real as, like, the commercials made it out to be, but I already knew it was going to be too good to be true anyways, but, so one of the big, like, announcements they teased at during, like, the previews was it hinted that SpongeBob and Sandy were going to get married. And, you know, I'll admit, as a kid, I was a SpongeBob and Sandy shipper. I don't know why. I just wanted to see them get together somehow, despite how ridiculous it was. A sponge and a squirrel getting together. But, so, the wedding scene in the episode was actually pretty funny. It was a cop-out scene, but maybe not as much as we thought. So, you know, the scene plays out where SpongeBob recalls the day Sandy and him got married, and everyone else thinks he's crazy, he's making it up, and it revealed that the whole wedding was actually a play, but the priest admit at the very end of the skit, I didn't know this was a play. And that's really funny if you think about it. I think a lot of people missed the joke here. So, because the priest was an actual priest and he thought this wasn't a play, that means he thought it was legitimately a real wedding, and he actually wed SpongeBob and Sandy. So, they're technically married and they don't even realize it. I thought that was really funny. Okay, maybe SpongeBob realizes they're married, but maybe Sandy doesn't. I don't know, but that was always a funny reveal. The fact that they're technically married and no one in the show realizes it. It's kind of funny. Like, it is strange, though. The original episodes of SpongeBob, it was supposed to present Sandy as SpongeBob's love interest. I remember, like, reading a bunch of old magazines, and they described Sandy as the apple of SpongeBob's eye, and you can definitely tell in some of the earlier episodes that SpongeBob had more of an affection for her, as seen in, like, you know, the Ripped Pants episode, or Tea at the Tree Dome. There's just something about it where it seemed like their friendship was more than just a friendship. It was like a cute infatuation with each other. And, heck, I remember even one of the video games on PC even teased at it further. So, I remember in the video game SpongeBob Employee of the Month, in SpongeBob's locker inside the Krusty Krab, he actually has a poster of Sandy in her bikini, and if you click on it with the mouse, SpongeBob will say, Sandy cheeks, looking at her makes me smile. So, a lot of the later episodes, they kind of back away from this crush that SpongeBob has on her. So you won't see, like, scenes of him picking flowers for her anymore, or seeing them, like, flirt with each other, and that's kind of a shame. I always liked that. I don't know why they decided to back off on that, but I kind of wish they would bring that back. Yes, it is illogical, but then again, SpongeBob is an illogical show, so if they want to ship a squirrel with a sponge, what's stopping them? Closest we ever... I remember Robot Chicken actually did a pretty funny skit where it was revealed that Sandy was pregnant. SpongeBob was likely the father. It was a really short skit, though, but I remember cracking up so hard when I first saw that. It's like, whoa. That's one thing I noticed that's really funny about, has anyone ever noticed that? How usually when a lot of shows make a parody of SpongeBob, they never seem to brutally make fun of it like they do other shows. It makes you wonder, like, are the makers of these shows actually like really big SpongeBob fans? That's why whenever they include it in their shows, they never go too far with it. Because, like I said, Robot Chicken, it did some spoofs of SpongeBob, but it never... Robot Chicken's like a show that does like really brutal, inappropriate parodies with their characters, where we'll see like the characters getting killed in really bloody ways. We'll see the characters cursing really badly. And so, I remember Robot Chicken at least had like 2 SpongeBob parodies. Well, it had 2 SpongeBob skits and one that was like a parody of SpongeBob, like in season 1, but although the skits had some inappropriate humor in it, it never went too far, though, to the point where like you saw the characters getting killed off in a bloody fashion, or... I mean, same thing with, like, Family Guy. Family Guy, you know, it's really harsh towards a lot of shows it makes fun of. And every time SpongeBob showed up, it was just like a name drop or a little visual or audio cameo. So it makes you wonder, huh? Do a lot of these people have soft spots for SpongeBob? They love it so much they can't even dare make fun of it? I don't know. That's just the way I see it. But it's funny, though, because, like, Seth Green, for instance, he's a big fan of Star Wars, and yet... he always loves to make fun of that in brutal fashions on Robot Chicken. And speaking of SpongeBob, so here's a really funny stage based off a SpongeBob meme. The one where Squidward's looking out of a window and longing to do whatever, you know, the people outside are doing. And so they did it with Waluigi. He's sadly looking through a window watching everyone but him in Super Smash Brothers. I thought this was so funny, and they even have like the sad defeat music from classic mode in this game. Oh god. I really do wish Waluigi was playable, though. And it saddens me, though, that if he ever did become playable, they'd probably do something stupid like make him a clone fighter of another character, and that'd be really like, I was already disappointed that Daisy was wasted as a clone character for Peach. They should have gave her a moveset inspired by Mario Party minigames, and for Waluigi, they should have given him a moveset inspired by the Mario Sport games. So, you know, you'd have like the tennis racket, you'd be able to serve tennis balls, whack people with the tennis racket, but then he could also have like his mid-air swim attack that he had in Mario Power Tennis. He could have like a soccer ball kick attack inspired by Mario Strikers. He could, like, his up special could be like where he pulls out like a baseball mitt and, you know, like, launches up into the air like he's catching a baseball or something, kind of like from Mario Super Sluggers or Mario All-Stars Baseball. And so, yeah, I don't see why a lot of people think Waluigi wouldn't be a unique moveset. I mean, honestly, I would have rather have had him than Wii Fit Trainer. I thought Wii Fit Trainer was a very underwhelming character. It was like a character nobody asked for. So, yeah, Waluigi would have made more sense as a character inspired by, you know, sport games. And then Daisy, they should have had her inspired by the party games. I mean, like, there's just so many minigames from Mario Party that could have transitioned well as, like, a minigame. Like, although she wasn't in the original Mario Party, she still was in Mario Party, the top 100. And so it'd be kind of funny to see one of her abilities be Bumper Ball, where, like, it could have been her side special, where she just gets on a giant ball and runs along and bumps any enemy that comes across it. You know, that would have been a funny idea for an attack. Her up special... I guess her up special could have been an umbrella still, because, you know, in the first Mario Party game she was in, one of the mini-games was the one where you had the umbrella and you had to collect all the coins as you were falling from the sky, and so it's like, that's the only move from Peach that she can really keep, but, then again, I guess, actually a better up special would have been the Mario Party dice block, actually, where she'd hit it, and then depending on what the roulette number would say when she hits the dice, that could have been like the impact power that it inflicts if it actually attacks someone when using it. You know, and then, trying to think, like, what would have been, like, some other good minigame-inspired attacks for Daisy. Let's see. It's hard to say, but, let's see. I know, like, there was, like, the coin mallet in some of the early Mario Party games where, like, you'd whack the mallet to get, like, coins out of people. Maybe they could have done something with that. Or the Go Fish minigame from Mario Party 1, where you had, like, the giant fishing rod, the gloved hand at the end. So, you know, they could easily recycle a bit of Isabelle's moveset to make that happen. Yeah, I just think it's a shame that Daisy was reduced to a clone of Peach. You know, I really feel bad for a lot of the diehard Daisy fans, because I remember there were so many people who wanted Daisy playable, and they would defend her saying, you know, like, I'll even admit, I was one of the people who said she probably wouldn't be playable, and even if she was, she'd just be a playable character, well, a clone of Peach. But there were so many diehard Daisy fans who would defend her. They'd say, you know, she's more than just a Peach clone. You know, and Nintendo needs to give her a chance to show what she can do. And so, although I was one who doubted it to begin with, I still feel bad because I know Daisy has a lot of fans, and to see that fans finally got her playable, but not in the way they wanted, that is really depressing. You know, although I'll admit I'm not the biggest Daisy fan, I'll admit she deserved better than that, though. But hey, at least she got in the game, unlike poor Waluigi. Waluigi's technically had it worse. I mean, at least there was actually a video game. Well, it's not like Daisy was ever excluded from, you know, an important spin-off game like Waluigi was in Mario Kart 7. That just felt unnecessary. I mean, there's only one game I can think of that Waluigi was in that Daisy wasn't, and that was, oh, what was it? Mario Dance Dance Revolution for GameCube, but honestly, Daisy not being in that game didn't really make an impact. Waluigi was in that game as a side villain. So, it's like, you know, it didn't really feel like... So if Daisy was in the game, it's like, what would have she done? It wasn't really a game that had playable characters. It's like the only supporting characters in that game were Mario and Luigi anyways. Wario, Waluigi, and Bowser, and a bunch of Mario bad guys were like the only characters who showed up. So, it's like, compared to Mario Kart 7, where a whole bunch of Mario Kart characters returned, but out of nowhere, Waluigi just wasn't playable, and that's where it felt really out of place. So, and then, to make matters worse, he wasn't even in Super Smash Bros. As a playable character, but Daisy was. So, yeah. But that being said, though, I know a lot of, like, Daisy supporters were really mad that she wasn't playable, but Rosalina was, and I honestly can't complain about that, though, because, I just feel like, you know, to me, Daisy was always a Peach clone. Even the game where she first debuted in, she was basically a replacement for Peach. She was the damsel in distress you had to save. And even then, it felt really pointless, though. It's like, why did they replace Peach with Daisy all of a sudden? And, you know, the only good thing to come from Daisy, in my opinion, is, you know, it's cute to see Luigi having his own love interest. Because it was kind of sad, like how in the old games, how Luigi wanted some affection for the princess, but he never got it. It was always Mario who would get her affection. So, you know, to give Luigi, you know, a girl in his life to cheer him up, I thought that was really cute. I loved how Mario Tennis presented Daisy as kind of like Luigi's other half, you know, his love interest. That was really cute. And especially, I especially love how the later games did a better job at teasing their relationship. So Rosalina, she was more than just like the princess you had to save, like the original princesses were. She was presented as a character who, you know, for no reason just wanted to help Mario rescue Peach in Mario Galaxy. She had nothing to gain in return. She just saw that he was in trouble, and she knew a lot about outer space, and she decided to help him. I mean, she has like a giant observatory. She's like a mother of all these different star babies that she adopts, the Lumas, and she has like all these like amazing abilities, like levitating in the air, having like a magic wand, being able to control the stars and the cosmos. And so yeah, it's like I can see why she was chosen over Daisy. She was just a more interesting character to work with, and it did not set well with a lot of, you know, I could even see why she was chosen over Waluigi, in fact. Rosalina was a great choice for a character, and I also liked how a lot of her moves were inspired by a lot of the gimmicks that were available in Mario Galaxy. Now, some people are probably wondering, now how come she had those abilities when it was Mario who was using it? But people need to keep in mind that Mario couldn't use those abilities alone. He could only do those because of the powers the Lumas gave him. And so, since Rosalina has the power to control the Lumas, it implies that she has these powers as well. So it made sense to see her doing like shooting star bits or shooting out like those star launchers. It made a lot of sense. So yeah, you know, they put more thought into like making a moveset for Rosalina. based off the game she was from. So it's a shame they couldn't have done the same for like Daisy or Waluigi, or heck, I'm sad that Crystal from Star Fox Adventures wasn't in this game. They could have did the same. They could have applied the same for Crystal as what they applied with to Rosalina, where they based their moveset off of the abilities of the game they debuted from, despite the fact it was a different character who used those abilities, like Star Fox. So in Star Fox Adventures, Fox, he was able to do a lot of these abilities with a staff, but they were Crystal staff. So because the abilities came from Crystal's staff, it could imply that Crystal could have been able to use those abilities as well, despite the fact she was absent for most of the game. So the only spell we got to see her use in the game was like the fire spell. All we gotta do is see her swipe with her staff and shoot some flames out of it, and that was about it. But eventually, when Fox gets a hold of the staff before he gets a chance to rescue her, he was able to get like an ice spell for it, an earthquake spell, a gravity boost spell. There's just so many things he could do with that staff, and I would have loved to have seen a moveset inspired by that with Crystal as the playable character, but apparently they thought she would have been better as an assist trophy. I don't know why. I was very underwhelmed by that. I really wanted to see a staff fighter for once. And here we have a custom stage of Doodle Bob from one of my favorite SpongeBob Season 2 episodes, Frankendoodle. Yo ho me noi! And here's the last stage we have to show today, and so this one is just Rouge the Bat. Yeah. Shovel Knight, get out of there! I think Bowser's stuck. Oh god, this is just... Whether it was intentional or not, this is a very naughty stage. Is it just me, or does Greninja sound like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch? Greninja, get out of there! Jeez. Why does everyone keep diving down there? Yeah, I kind of miss the old version of Rouge the Bat. Like, I hate how, like, in the modern games, they just have her kind of portrayed more like a villain. She acts like... I don't like her voice either. It's, in the old games, she sounded kind of, sneaky and, sneaky but clever. It's like she knew what she was doing, and she had things under control. And I hate how the later games, they just have her as a stereotypical, like, a teenage girl bully, it sounds like. She's just there to make, like, all these side comments, and she's trying to sound as seductive as possible, and, I just don't like it. I liked it better when, whatever happened to her being an agent, now she's just, female bully #1 or something. I just don't like what they've done with her. Ever since Sonic Free Riders, they just ruined her character, and I was hoping Sonic, Team Sonic Racing would have revived her a bit, and she's still kind of a brat again. She's honestly a little more annoying too. I don't know, but well, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.